Hey, fun people! Welcome back to Everything Aja. And if you're new here, hello. My name is Aja. I am an experienced curriculum specialist who is now a content creator turned educational consultant. So I want to welcome you. Today, I am ready to dive in as we talk about the truth behind teaching reading and why so many Black kids are behind. And we started this topic last week, and we talked about the statistics when it comes to African American children reading versus other ethnicities. And it was flabbergasting how big the gap was between the different races. And on yesterday, as you guys know, I did my free workshop, The Three Secrets to Teaching Reading with Ease. And it was just crazy how many people on the call were talking about how mind blowing it was to receive those statistics. So, I definitely wanted to get on here and just talk a little bit more about the topic and talk a little bit about what is going on behind reading and why there is such a gap in order for us to really band together in order to close in the gap. So, if you're ready, I'm ready. Give me a thumbs up. Let's rock and roll. So, the first thing I want to talk about is what is reading? Reading is so broad. It's like a big umbrella. And so often we hear, reading, and I always teach teaching reading with ease. And the truth of the matter is, with reading, there's so many different pieces to the puzzle. Imagine reading as one big jumbo puzzle that you have to complete. It has so many different pieces, and all of these little pieces fall into five different pillars. And we call these the five pillars of reading. And they are as such: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. So these are the five different pillars of reading. So let me just show you what each one of them means. So you see the first pillar is phonemic awareness. And if you've never heard of phonemic awareness, this is pretty much sounds. What sounds do you hear? So I'm not connecting sounds with letters. I'm just strictly talking about sounds. So you can easily do this with a child if you just ask them, what sounds do you hear? So with my daughter, I love to do phonemic awareness games while we're in the car because she has no choice but to sit and listen to me talk. But you can have children figure out what sounds they hear. For example, if I said the word cat, what are the three sounds that you hear? K, at. They hear k, at. Those are the three different sounds that they would hear. Notice I'm not telling them to spell the word cat. I'm not correlating the sounds with any letters. I'm just asking them, what sounds do they hear? You can also ask children, what is the beginning sound that you hear in the word cat? And they should say k, because that was the first sound that they actually heard in that word. So that is phonemic awareness. And phonemic awareness solely is based on sounds. So the next pillar of reading is phonics. And this is what we are so familiar with that we completely forget about the phonemic awareness aspect. But phonics is when you actually are connecting sounds with letters. And there's a big bridge when you say cat. How do you spell cat? Now children are connecting the sounds in the word at with the letter CAT. You can also show them the word cat and have them say C. C says k. What sound does C make? K. Great. A says ah. What sound does A make? Ah. T says t. What sound does T make? T. Now let's blend these sounds together. K, at, as you're pointing to the letter CAT, and they say at, cat. And that is all phonics. That's connecting the sounds that they hear with the actual letters. So already right then, reading is just already so complicated because there are two completely different pillars. So I'm trying to break down each and every pillar for you so that we can really join together and band together in order to close this gap. So let's talk about the next pillar, which is vocabulary. And this is dealing with word parts and word meanings. So when I say word parts, I'm talking about affixes, which are prefixes, suffixes, root words, and the different meanings of a word and all of that great grand stuff. But when you hear like un means not and you say undo, you want to take apart or dehydrate, it means without hydration. Hydra means water, and then shun is the suffix, which means the state of. And understanding those word parts and how those word parts contribute to the meaning of a word, and that is vocabulary, which is another pillar of reading. Then you have comprehension, and this is simply sounding almost self-explanatory, but understanding the meaning behind text. So as you read a passage or something to a child, do they understand what the text just said? Do they understand the meaning behind what was just read to them or what they just read independently? And last but certainly not least, there is fluency. And fluency is when you're dealing with children reading accurately with speed and expression on their own. So, now that you understand the five different pillars of reading, let's talk about it for a second. He said, "You're liking the way I'm separating what each pillar means." Yay, 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 yay. Awesome, awesome. I wanted everybody to get clarity on what the pillars are so that we can band together in order to close this gap. So now that you understand what the five pillars mean, I do want to let you know, if you want to go even further in understanding these pillars and taking a step further and how you can actually help, band these pillars together, I do have two ebooks that go over preparing children with success in reading. I have the parent edition and as well as the teacher edition to the same ebook, whether you're a parent or a teacher. I have the ebook for you. So you can definitely check that out down below in the descriptions. But in addition to going further, in addition to getting the ebook and being able to apply these pillars of reading, it's important that we look at some statistics. And I'm going to break down these statistics because it's important that you understand the grand scope of things and where all these different pieces fall into place. I told you reading is like a big old jigsaw puzzle. So let's talk about where all these pieces fall. So we went over the five different pillars of reading. And when you think about reading on a grade level, you have to think about a child doing all five pillars of reading simultaneously. That means in order to read on grade level, they are comprehending grade level text, they're reading grade level text fluently, they are breaking down grade level words using vocabulary. They are using phonics and phonemic awareness in order to decode unknown words. And they're doing all those five pillars of reading every time they look at a grade level text. So let's get into some statistics. And as I talk about reading on grade level, just keep in mind those five pillars of reading and what a child has to do in order to master those five pillars of reading. So the first fact is that only 60% of kids are actually ready to start kindergarten, meaning that 2 out of every 10 children that start kindergarten are reading at a 2 to 3 year disadvantage, meaning 2 to 3 years behind, meaning they have a 1 year disadvantage, meaning that children that are starting kindergarten are babies, those 3 and 4 year olds, we're already starting them off in school with a 1 year disadvantage. And unfortunately, when you do this, your students who are behind already in kindergarten, truth of the matter is they only make 1 year's worth of progress at each grade level, meaning they'll always be behind their classmates, and they become more likely to repeat grade levels. So woo, if they're behind in kindergarten, how does that affect them as they go to third grade, as they go to fourth grade, as they go to fifth grade, and as they advance? Well, students who are behind when they start kindergarten, believe it or not, they make up the largest portion of high school dropouts and have a 12% chance of attending college. So when you have a child who's behind when they are 4, look down the long road and think about them going into college, and a gap has to be filled immediately so that they're not behind, because once they start their road off behind, it's harder and harder and harder for them to get caught up. And chances are, looking at the data, unfortunately, they are now 1/6 more likely to drop out of high school. So think about that the next time you're teaching sounds and you think that it doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you, you matter, your job matters, and those sounds sounding out the word cat, that matters, okay? It truly does. And not only matters in the short term, but it also matters in the long run. And believe it or not, when it comes to developing lessons and developing things that really help close these gaps, we try so hard as teachers, man. Lord knows, I've been the one that stayed up at the school until the custodians locked us out. We've been the ones that had to call the principal and say, hey, can you get the custodian to come back and unlock the doors? Because we were trying to do all that we can with planning to help close that gap. And I've done a lot of the stress and anxiety and the work for you, but I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. If this is you and you're like, I know the statistics, Aja, I'm trying to do everything I can to close this gap, then let me tell you something. Let me tell you that the average teacher spends 7 hours per week just searching for instructional resources, both paid and free. And they spend another 5 hours per week creating their own materials. So, think about all the time. If you started to do the math, this is almost 2 years worth of just planning lessons. And unfortunately, we're humans. And what ends up happening is we end up trying to find shortcuts and we end up just saying, hey, put on a movie, do this worksheet. And the gap in children continues to spread and it continues to widen. And this is why we really have to like dive down even deeper. Hey, Tanika, you said your second year of teaching. Oh, yes, you said help. Girl, I have the thing for you. I remember my second year teaching. I actually did a workshop last night, The Three Secrets of Teaching Reading with Ease. You definitely have to watch that workshop. The link is down below in the description. But in the workshop, I expressed my entire second year of teaching. And there was a lot of things that I put in place during my second year that literally led me to where I am now. So your second year is so crucial. Let me know, how was your first year teaching? Because first year teaching is woo, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so now you have a little bit of experience and you kind of know what you like and you also know what you don't want to do because I've like I said, I've been the one that stayed up to the I don't want to call people out, but till the bugs start crawling. Till the bugs start crawling. And so I don't want that to be you because have you guys seen the teacher burnout rate right now? It is off the roof, the highest that it has ever been. And the truth of the matter is that we're burnt out as teachers. We're burned out. And what ends up happening is if we leave the profession or we get promoted, honestly. And if we get promoted, then we're out the classroom. And if we leave the profession, then we're leaving people that really don't want to be there. So Tanika, I also added the link down below in the chat box, so you also have that as well. Please watch that workshop. I expressed my second year teaching and what I did differently in order to make teaching reading easy and effective for me. And especially talking about reading, I talked last week about the difference between African Americans and Caucasians. And if you haven't watched that video, it is amazing. So make sure that after this, you go back and you watch that because in that live, I go over all the statistics with African American children and why they are so far behind. But I want to bring up a very interesting fact that I did not bring up in that video. You said your first year was very stressful, girl. So what was so stressful? Break it down so that I can help you. Um, yes. You said, what's up, sis? Love you. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, thanks for tuning in. So, when we think about African American children and we think about this gap and we think about ourselves, there's like a three-part triangle that goes on and transpires. And Tanika, still keep dropping down what was so stressful so that I can help you even further for the second year coming up. So, when we think about African American children, one thing that I did not bring up, I brought up the statistics. I brought up the stats of where we are compared to other races. But one thing I did not bring up, we have talked about the 5 pillars of reading on today's live, and we talked about phonemic awareness, phonics, comprehension, vocabulary, and fluency, and how all of those things work together. Like one big gear or one big puzzle piece that we have to put each piece together. And unfortunately, when children have a lack or they have a deficiency, if something's lacking, if one of those five pillars is lacking, then nine times out of 10, the other ones will start to fall down. You see, think about it like a domino set. And if you have ever played with dominoes and tried to like set up all the dominoes in a row, once one falls down, then the other ones will start to fall down afterwards. And then they sequentially all fall down. So if a child is lacking one, just one of those pillars, then the other pillars will slowly but surely fall down. So, what does this mean, and how does this contribute to the African American child? Well, I'm getting there. You see, if a child is starting off kindergarten already behind, then nine times out of 10, they're lacking phonemic awareness and they're lacking phonics. And when they're lacking phonemic awareness, that means they can't do things such as sound it out. We love to say, sound it out, sound it out. And y'all, I was one that did not learn phonologic awareness, and I did not learn based on phonics. I learned based on memorizing sight words. And I share a little bit about that in the workshop. So make sure y'all watch that workshop. But I share a little bit about my experience of how I learned how to read, even as an adult. I was literally learning how to read as I was teaching children how to read. We were learning together. I was 20 and they were 7. So I share that story in the workshop. So make sure you check that out. But what I'm saying is children who are starting off kindergarten behind, meaning they're starting off with foundational skills that are lacking. They are missing kindergarten skills. They're missing readiness skills. They do not understand sounds, and they certainly do not understand how sounds correlate with letters. Then what ends up happening is they cannot decode words. And when they cannot decode words, they certainly cannot comprehend a text. And then here we are in school shoving a book in front of them, and they begin to hate to read. And when we look at the statistics of children who actually love to read, you'll notice that African American children have the lowest percentage of children who like to read. There it is, right there on the screen. At 9 years old, they did a study. There was a study done of children who enjoy reading for fun, and you'll notice African American and also Hispanic children have the lowest percentage, both as 9-year-olds and 13-year-olds. So, what does this tell us? This tells us that getting children to fall in love with learning is a direct correspondence of closing in that gap. And when they hate to do something or they don't want to do something, they'll start to dread it and then drift apart from it. Think about something that you absolutely hate to do, and imagine somebody telling you that you have to do it. You're going to go into it with a very negative headspace. You're going to go into it like already dreading it, thinking it's awful, and you're never going to fall in love with it. And because you don't like it, you're naturally always driving against the current. So, how do we close this gap? How do we get children to one, like to learn so that I can teach them? If they do not have any buy in, you're never going to close in that gap. You have to make them want to jump from one side to the next. And if they hate reading, if they are one of those children that we just saw that hates to read, if they're one of these that just does not want to read, that it is going to be darn near impossible to get them to close this gap. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you it's up to you to close this gap. It's up to you to close in the gap for that child. It's up to you to not have your children drop out of high school from what you teach them when they're 6 years old. We just saw the correlation between high school and kindergarten. Children who are already behind at kindergarten are literally 1/6 likely to drop out in high school. So this means what we teach them as little babies when they're 4 and 5, and even fourth and fifth grade, it has a direct correspondence of where if they go to college or not. It's said that children who are behind in kindergarten have a 12% only have a 12% chance of actually attending college. That is drastic. And we're wanting to close this gap. And when we think about our future and we think about the opportunities granted to us, we want to do something better for the future ahead. We always want something more for them than what we had for ourselves. And if you are ready to make that change, if you're like, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, I'm also ready to put myself first. I showed you earlier that the average teacher that tries to close in this gap ends up spending and wasting almost 2 years of their lives simply doing lesson plans. And nobody has 2 years to waste. Life is too short. So we have to learn how to take back our time and take back those 2 years that are snatched away from you. I know we love naturally if we're in education, whether we're homeschooling or a teacher, we love children. We love making a difference. You said exactly, yes. We love making a difference, but we also have to keep ourselves first. So, what if I were to tell you that you could do both? You can do both. You can literally make teaching easy so that you can spend those 2 years doing things that you want to do. You can literally make a difference and close in this learning gap while you're not sacrificing yourself. You can close this learning gap for a child or multiple children, hundreds of children, while you're also spending your weekends with your family and friends. You can close this learning gap while you do you, boo. Imagine having a bank of lessons that encourage optimal engagement for children. Imagine having a weekly lesson planning system that saves hours of planning. Imagine having schedules, routines, transitions, management tools, allowing you to be stress free. Imagine having simplicity and clarity on what to teach, when to teach, and how to teach so that you can actually go and work and close in this gap. Imagine having effective reading professional development at your fingertips so that you can literally dive into these 5 pillars of freedom and teaching them effectively. So you can have professional development from a professional on all 5 pillars of reading. That's phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and even vocabulary. Imagine having high reading growth in students that actually surpass their goals. And most importantly, imagine being supported along the journey by a professional. If this sounds great, if this sounds like you, write in the chat box, me. I want to know, are you ready to make a change, not only for your children, but also for yourself? You can close in this gap. You can close in this gap. I promise you, it's not something that's impossible, but it is something that I can help you with. And I don't want you to sacrifice 2 years in order to just close the gap a little bit. So I want you to watch my 3 secrets of teaching reading with ease, and I'll show you exactly how to do this. If you can watch it now, it's an instant workshop. We did it last night, and now you get to watch the replay of that workshop. In that workshop, you will learn what everybody gets wrong about teaching reading and what you can do instead. You'll learn the game-changing mind shift that will have your teaching instruction run on autopilot. You'll learn how to reimagine what's possible and come up with a system that's not only fun, but it's also simple in order for you to close this gap. And once again, you'll walk away with one step that you can immediately implement to achieve high growth while working less. Can you imagine increasing reading achievement while working less? I'm here to tell you that you don't have to sacrifice all of your life. You don't have to sacrifice 2 years. I've done the work. I've done the sacrificing, and now I want you to be able to work smarter, not harder, so that you can reach the target a lot faster than I did, so that you know how to really close in those gaps without wasting all of your weekends and all of your nighttime. I want you to keep the you in your life. Like so many of us, I sacrificed my entire personal life in order to close the gaps. Once I learned and developed how to close the gaps, I said, okay, that was great. That was a lot of stress that I just endured, a lot of anxiety, a lot of heartache. But now let me teach somebody else how to do it without the anxiety, without the stress. And I want the same for you. So, um, You said me. Yes, Tanika, me. I can't wait till you watch the workshop. And there's a workbook that goes along with the workshop. So as soon as you sign up, you'll receive, I mean, as soon as you click the link, you'll receive both the workbook and the workshop. I see another me in the chat box. Oh, yeah. You'll see the workbook. There's a workbook that goes hand in hand with it so that you can learn how to teach reading and work smarter and not harder. So I want to know what your thoughts are. I want to know what's ahead for you. What are you doing to make this change? What are you doing to help closing these gaps? What are you doing to literally bridge the gap with children, but also keep yourself first? Because I do not want you to lose yourself. I lost myself in the process. I can honestly admit and tell you that I lost myself in the process. And that's why I can be here today saying, I don't want the same for you. I want you to be able to bridge that gap without the stress. So let me know in the chat box, what are you doing? Even if it's as simple as watching the free workshop, that's a step. That's the step to closing the gap is watching the workshop. Let me know what you're doing to make that change. And I also just want to put in a plug there that I do offer professional development for increasing reading achievement with ease. So here are my credentials. I would love to get into your school buildings or get into your private school and really dive in and work with you even further. So I'm excited to make the change. I'm excited for Tanika to make the change, Angela to make the change, Bonnie to make the change. I'm excited for every single person watching the replay, watching this live to make the change. But we have our work cut out for us. There is a gap, there is a learning gap. And I've done the work. So now it's just figuring out, okay, what do you need to do in order to just say yes? What do you need to do in order to say, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to not only close the gap, but to make this as stress-free as I possibly can for myself. Because I'm telling you, when I went on the mission to close the gap, I lost myself. I spent all my weekends, all my nights just really pouring into my children, and I never had the time to pour into me. And that's why I stand so strongly on working smarter, not harder, because you can do the same thing. You can close in those gaps and you can effectively teach reading without losing yourself. So, teaching can be simple. Teaching can be simple. So I'm excited to see what you do from here going forward. If you're not a member yet, please subscribe down below. What are you waiting on? Join this amazing community. I'll see you later on this week. And remember, if you have not already, you have to watch the other live about why Black children are so behind, because the statistics in that will blow your mind. And in that video, I talk about how to best teach African American children, because it is a difference. It is a difference. And if we're going to really band together to close this gap, we have to accept the difference and be able to cater to that difference. So make sure you have two things to watch. You have the free workshop to watch and also this video. And I'll see you in the video and see you in the workshop.